Raxis lead penetration tester Matt Dunn here, and if you've been following along with our cross-site scripting series, you've seen us go over the basics of cross-site scripting and some filter evasion as well as side loading techniques to insert payloads. Now, if you've been watching these videos, you know that we've only been inserting proof of concepts, things that pop an alert box, for example, in a web application. Now, while this is very exciting from an attacker's standpoint, and I can attest to that, it is very exciting popping an alert box on someone else's web application, there are much more dangerous things that a malicious actor can do once they've discovered a cross-site scripting vulnerability. So this video is going to cover a couple of those techniques and dangerous payloads that attackers can actually use to attack web applications. We'll go over things to steal cookies, website defacement, and maybe a few others. And then we'll go over some remediations where even if you can't defend against cross-site scripting, you can help defend against these more dangerous payloads. Let's get to it. If you've been following along with our other cross-site scripting blog series, you'll be familiar with this blog and the fact that it is vulnerable to cross-site scripting in the stored comments that we can insert here. Now, if you see at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see that we have one cookie set that is a session ID with a UUID value. You'll also notice that the HTTP only flag and the secure flag are not set, making it vulnerable to access via JavaScript in the browser. So first, I'm going to set up a Python HTTP server just to catch the cookie value as we send it from the payload. So you'll see that on port 8000 on the right side of the screen. And then we're going to insert our payload into the comment. Now this payload is pretty straightforward, but I will highlight it. We are going to use the fetch method, which is just a JavaScript method to fetch a web request. And we will set the parameter value C equal to the document.cookie. We'll set it using the GET request, and we'll make sure that it doesn't have any cross-origin restrictions. We'll submit that here. And then when the page reloads, we'll see that we received a GET request in our Python listener that has the session ID cookie value. Now, if we reload the page, because you can see here that there's nothing in the comment, we'll refresh and we will get it every single time. So every single time a visitor now visits this page, the attacker is getting the cookie value of their session. And this is why the HTTP only flag is so important. It prevents the attacker from accessing the cookie value. So even if they are able to insert stored cross-site scripting, they won't be able to send the cookie to themselves and then steal the session. Now that we've covered cookie theft, we'll cover a slightly more obvious payload that a cross-site scripting vulnerability could use. This is website defacement, and we'll go through a couple of different types as well as the different things that they can do. So pretty much if you're inserting cross-site scripting, you could also just insert arbitrary HTML tags. So in this example, we're going to insert style tags that will insert a background image. In this case, it'll be the logo that I use as the background image from my personal website. So after we submit it, we will now see that the background image is just constantly a repost of my background image and my logo. Now this seems pretty innocuous, but you could use it to overwrite their logo. You could use it to overwrite their login page. You could just use it to say, hey, we're hacked, which was a big thing in the late 90s and early 2000s. Now, slightly more dangerous would be, can we just redirect them to another site by, switching the window.location? This is also very useful from an attacker's perspective because you can use this to direct users to a drive-by download site, to a site that's hosting malware, to really any site that you would want to. And so this can be very dangerous if not caught. And so we'll see here, we'll insert this comment and we'll just see all we're doing is we're changing the window.location to my personal website. And once we submit this, we will be redirected once the page loads. And you'll see we got redirected to my website. If we go back to the local host blog page, this will keep happening over and over. We keep going back, we keep getting redirected. And this is because as soon as the page loads, it's loading that window.location to be another place. And so if this was a malicious site, we would be able to deliver malware, we would be able to launch other attacks, maybe direct them to insert credentials, whatever we'd really want to do on that directed page. And so that gives it a little bit more danger in that we can redirect users at will once we've loaded that JavaScript. For a third type of attack, we're going to perform cross-site request forgery. Now, this is a different attack than cross-site scripting, but is often delivered via cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. In this example, we'll insert it as a stored cross-site scripting vulnerability that will cause a user to issue a HTTP request every time that they visit the site. Now, this can be used to bypass cross-origin protections. It can also be used as part of a phishing attack where anytime the user visits that site, it'll perform a malicious HTTP request. This can be done to delete content, insert content, or really anything that the user can do. So we'll insert that as a comment here. And what our HTTP request is going to do is that it's going to send a new comment from this author with just the comment, new comment. And so now anytime the user will visit this page, a new comment will be inserted on their behalf. So we'll submit this. And we'll see our comment is here. But now when we reload, we'll see that that new comment is inserted. If we continue to reload or revisit the page, we'll see that it's inserted again. And so there are a couple different protections we can use to protect against cross-site request forgery. This is obviously a more innocuous example, but if a user was logged into an application and say had admin privileges, we could use this cross-site request forgery to escalate our own privileges on a lower privileged account, or we could use it to delete data from the database, or any other action that that user could perform. In order to protect against this, we use what's called cross-site request forgery tokens. These are generated values by the web page so that when we are making new web requests, we can't predict what that value will be. That way, even if this payload is inserted without that cross-site request forgery token, we're going to be unable to properly make the request because we won't know that value ahead of time. Now that we've demonstrated more advanced attacks including cookie theft, website defacement, and cross-site request forgery, there are protections we can take and remediations we can make on our web applications in order to protect against some of these more advanced attacks, even if the website is susceptible to cross-site scripting. For cookie theft, the number one thing we can do is include the HTTP only flag on all of our cookie values, especially ones that have to do with our session cookies. The HTTP only flag prevents JavaScript from accessing the cookie in the browser, which means that our cross-site scripting payloads won't be able to send it to our attacker. For cross-site request forgery, there's a concept called cross-site request forgery tokens. And these are tokens that are generated by the client-side application and then sent to the server side to authenticate essentially that it is a legitimate request coming from the user's browser and not one initiated from cross-site scripting or from another payload. And all of these techniques can also be aided against by using a proper content security policy. A content security policy essentially tells the browser where should I accept valid JavaScript, CSS, and other types of tags in the web application itself. A very specific content security policy will allow the application to only accept the minimum amount that it needs in order to function, which prevents inserted payloads such as our JavaScript in line to cease to function, which means that these cross-site scripting attacks are basically dead in their tracks. And so it's one of the most important tools that we can use as long as it is finely tuned to prevent these types of attacks from happening. If you'd like to know more about some of the cross-site scripting payloads I've seen in the wild, some of the vulnerabilities I've seen, including ones that didn't protect their cookies or other attacks like that, be sure to check out our other blogs and some of the CVEs that I've discovered. Thanks.